What the heck is up with the Porsche 911? It's the German wildcard that took the sports car rulebook, ripped it up, and made a paper airplane out of it. Whoa. It's the benchmark all other performance cars try to catch. It's iconic, it's precision, it is performance, and it's my all-time favorite car. Yeah, it is the car that your dad just thinks is a souped-up Volkswagen Beetle. But come on, Dad, you're gonna see why it's oh so much more than a bug. Welcome to the rundown on every gen of the Porsche 911. Before 959s, 918s, and even GT3 RSs, Porsche, well, was this. Dr. Ing HCF Porsche GmbH Konstruktion und Beratung für Motoren. Okay. And they got their start building performance tanks and other goodies for a not-so-savory bunch. But used all that knowledge to start building cars as tough as tanks. Because when Dr. Porsche's son, Ferry, designed his dream sports car, the Porsche 356, everything, and I mean everything, changed for Porsche. They developed this sporty, roly-poly looking car for more than a decade before Porsche's golden child would emerge from the rainy lands of Deutschland. And it was called the Porsche 911. Okay, actually, the 911 was originally called the 901 because they had to change it because Peugeot had a trademark on 3-digit names with zeros in the middle. If you want to learn more, just Google it. Anyways, like any good event, you know the real party happens in the back. And of course, this baby had a flat 6 rear-mounted engine, something no other sports car would successfully do ever. The original 911 was practical, stylish, and more importantly, an absolute fest. That's party for German, but the fest was about to go wild, yeah! Because in 1972, Porsche unveiled something they never should have, the 911 Carrera RS 2.7, a stripped-down homologation special for the road that not only allowed them to go racing, but was also the fastest 911 to date with 210 horses. And you guessed it, a sexy 2.7-liter flat 6. God, that sounds so good. This car began what is now the iconic Carrera nameplate, derived from the Carrera Panamericana race. But I mean, just look at this thing. Big lettering, even bigger wing, and one of the most desirable 911 body styles ever made. It was truly the blueprint for the Porsche RS products that we know today and love. God, the things I would do for one of these, or even a 991 RS. Anyway, in the smack dab in the 1970s, Porsche introduced possibly the coolest thing that they've ever done, the Porsche 911 Turbo. Internally, as you know, as the 930, this was the first turbocharged 911 and really one of the first mainstream turbo performance cars in existence. And yes, hippies, I know the Chevy Corvair had a turbo first, but you know what the Corvair didn't have? The most badass nickname of all time in all of automotive history, the Widowmaker. Hell yeah. Death! The turbo lag from these things in the early 930s was so intense that it would hit you like a wall of torque that, well, could kill you. The 930 also introduced that thick, wide-body style to house what were now much bigger tires and way beefier suspension. And to control, or at least attempt to control all that monster torque, they needed a monster wing. And may I present you the whale tail. Many keyboard warriors back in the day actually thought this thing was tacky and ugly, but they also thought this outfit was cool at the time. What were they thinking? And real quick, speaking of cool outfits, upgrade your wardrobe with these limited run ideal tees. We have the in case of emergency, call 911. We have one of my all-time favorites at the track, the lap dance, for those who like their curves fast and furious. Also, you got today's special, fried eggs for you 996 nuts. And inspired by my Safari back here, you have the man over the moon. If you love 911s as much as me, we'll go grab one before we run out, linked in the pinned first comment below. Now, back to the show. I mean, clearly, neither of those turned out to be true because people now are feral for these cars and will shell out an arm and a leg for this body style. But if we're talking whales, let's talk about Moby Dick. Yeah, this is the 935, Porsche's rare spec 911 based on the 930, and yet again, Porsche created a masterpiece. Which, have you seen the contemporary 935? I mean, it's just a casual $1 million+ car for them big spenders. Yeah. Let's talk about some more contemporary cars, shall we? Because after nearly 2 decades of more or less the same 911 platform, Porsche did the unthinkable. They gave us the first fully refreshed 911. They called it the 964. It was launched during the US recession in 1989, so no one had any money to buy a new Porsche. Heck, even I tried to buy one as a baby danger. Hi, can I buy a new 911? Yeah, they start at $51,000. Okay, to me, this is the holy grail of modern P cars. They're just so good. And today, you know it because it was thrown into the spotlight as the platform when Singer started building its reimagined resto-modded 911s. And it was also the platform of choice when TJ Russell made the world fall in love with 911 Safaris. And that car started life as a 964 Cabriolet. Crazy, it actually kind of looks like a coupe. But when the 964 was new, it was different, like 85% different than the outgoing car. We're talking new transaxle, new coilover suspension, better safety, and a brand spanking new 3.6 liter, 250 horsepower flat six for everyone to enjoy. It sounded just as good inside as outside. And oh yeah, it also had the first all-wheel drive variant called the Carrera 4, which that tech actually was derived from the lethal 959. Now, the 964 started the tradition of the Carrera being the base model 911, but continued the lineage of high-performance models like the Turbo and Turbo S. It was the perfect successor to the original and was a clinical showcase of how Porsche consistently improves their flagship automobile. And behind the wheel of one, life does not get much better than this. Although the only difference between me being in this 911 and a Porcupine is that the prick, well, it's on the inside. Oh. Now, as much as I love the 964, the world, they love the 993. You thought the 964 looked smooth and good as an RWB? Well, the 993 looks smooth and even better as an RWB. And it drove smooth too. The multi-link suspension was more forgiving than its predecessor, but also had a big increase in grip. The interior was also a bit softer, more 90s approach to a German sports luxury vehicle. But what wasn't soft was the big boy turbo models. Instead of one puny little turbo, this baby got 2. It could now hit the 400 horsepower mark and take the fight directly to Ferrari and Mercedes and the whole freaking earth. But while the 911 seemed like it was on top of the world at the time, the factory at Stuttgart was struggling. Yeah, sales, they were down the toilet. And so who saved them? Toyota. Well, kinda. They were technically engineer consultants formerly used by Toyota, but that doesn't matter because they brought the revolutionary production method called Kaizen to Porsche factories and finally made the 911 assembly line run as smoothly as the 911 itself. And after a short 4-year run, the 993 went bye-bye, and in its place was... Wait, is that a fried egg? Oh, it's just the 996. Silly me. The new water pumping 996 hit the streets in 1999, and it was very different from its roots in terms of styling. It somehow got even softer and more dad bod than the 993. And while the headlights do admittedly look like running eggs, it was on purpose as a cost-cutting measure that combined what would have been multiple parts into one light assembly. And also it took inspiration from the GT1, so that's cool. But anyway, those headlights were one of many moves during the 996 era that helped Porsche not just survive the 1990s, but thrive in the 2000s. And you want to know why the C4S looks like it's smiling in the front? Because it knows it's got the best rear end of any 911 ever. But don't think for a freaking second that the 996 wasn't a real 911, because the 996's combination of a new updated flat 6 and chassis made it one of the purest 911 experiences in history. And this is where Porsche pretty much just went batshit crazy. This is the 996 GT3, folks. Big ass wing, a race spec engine by Mezger, and redonkulous weight reduction that Jenny Craig could get behind. It was the whole 9 yards, my guy. But if you thought the GT3 was unhinged, Porsche went full Predator mode with the GT2. It made a full 100 horsepower more than the already bonkers GT3 and began a run of 911s that would literally change the world. 2004 rolled around and the first new 911 of the 21st century was unveiled, and it was looking like perfection had finally come their way. The design was more traditional than the 996, with no breakfast-themed styling choices in all class. The interior was a huge step up in luxury and feel, and since I currently own both a 996 and 997 911, I always tell people the 997 is only 2 years newer. The interior and exterior look like 20 years newer. The 997 Carrera S model now had 350 horsepower, almost as much as the 996 GT3 did just a few years ago. And what about the big dog 911s? Well, they were more delicious than a nice hot Wiener Schnitzel. The 997 GT3 RS is no joke. Probably the best driving 911 of all time, and proved that Porsche could do it all. From everyday sports cars to supercar killing street legal race cars. Just go to a Porsche store, hand them a credit card, and you could get whatever you want. From a plain Jane Carrera all the way to an RS 4.0, although you might go into debt. The 997 generation really showed that Porsche could expand its portfolio with just the 911. But by now, in 2011, Porsche wanted, you guessed it, more. The new 991 Porsche 911 was longer, lower, and wider than the 997, and it introduced more advanced technology like electric power steering, which some of us haven't been able to get behind. And for some reason, Porsche does this thing where they split a generation into 2 sub-generations. Those damn Germans. So there's a 991.1 that was from 2011 to 2015, and then the 991.2, which was 2016 to 2019. And during this generation, their track weapon of choice could come in purple or green or pink. It didn't matter, whatever crazy color that you wanted, because it was the 991 GT3 RS, and it smacked just about every other performance manufacturer in the teeth when it broke lap records around the world. And even though the PDK automatic GT3 RS was amazing and the best automatic transmission in the world, you know your boy would want a manual. Porsche, well, they knew their fan base and threw them a bone with the GT3 Touring. You could get it with the manual transmission. It was softer styled than the big wang GT3 cars, and it was pure magic. And now it's one of the most desirable pieces of machinery in history. But in typical Porsche fashion, the GT3 variant was only the second baddest mother, because that crown goes to the 991.2 GT2 RS, the most powerful 911 that they have ever built, with 691 horses, even less weight than the GT3, and nothing except pure performance and someone with some serious balls in the driver's seat. And that brings us to the current generation, the 992. We thought the 997, well, it was perfection, but now this is God-tier automotive development. And yet again, the new 911 is wider, meaner, and has even more tech than ever. The 992 Turbo S shocked journalists around the world for its insane twin-turbo all-wheel drive acceleration. Like, we're talking 2.7 seconds 0 to 60. And now with the new 992.2 GTS beating the Turbo S, yeah, things are about to get spicy. But even with the 992 base Carrera, it's maintained the world's benchmarking for sports cars. But neither the Carrera or turbos embodied the essence of Porsche quite like the 992 GT3 and GT3 RS cars. These cars literally took the front end of the 911 Cup race car and slapped it on a road legal version. Bam! And keeping with their commitment to enthusiasts, the GT3 came with the option for a manual transmission. These guys do everything. It is this generation that's the culmination of everything that the 911 means to Porsche and the world. Racing pedigree, daily usability, incredible driver engagement, and of course, that timeless shape that is ingrained into the minds of millions throughout the world. The 911 makes no compromises and has committed to one basic formula for its entire life when other cars wouldn't. And that's why the Porsche 911 is the king of the sports car. I mean, the 911 has been around for decades, and over the years, it's been constantly refined, tweaked, and perfected to the point where it's basically the blueprint masterclass for what a sports car should be. Seriously, it's like every generation of 911 just sets the bar higher and higher. There was a Reddit thread that I read recently, and that is a total tongue twister. What makes a car a supercar? And the consensus was, if you wanted to be called a supercar, you had to beat the Carrera of its time. Plus, there is a 911 that fits every budget and lifestyle. Cabriolet, Targa, 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, turbo, naturally aspirated, automatic, or shift it yourself manual. It just makes it the most practical sports car in the world. Being rear engine makes the 911 the car that you look back every time that you park it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the rundown on the Porsche 911. Hit me in the comments with your ideal spec. Which gen, what color? I want to know. I'm Brad, this is Ideal, and if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and you will love this video that Trav did on turbos. Like, you know, the 911 Turbo. Or check out whatever YouTube recommends you watch next down here. That was awesome. Love you guys, and promise me one thing. Keep living the ideal lifestyle.